Hi, I'm Billie Jean King, and I want to welcome you to the Huddle, a look at LGBTQI plus inclusion in sports from Athlete Ally, the Out Foundation, and Yahoo Sports. Last month marked the 47th anniversary of my famous Battle of the Sexes against Bobby Riggs. That day I won a tennis match, and we won a victory for gender equality in sports. It was a landmark moment in my lifelong fight for equality in and out of sports. Regardless of gender identities, sexuality, race, or ability, we all deserve to be treated with dignity and respect. I've been thinking a lot about a powerful quote by one of my sheroes, who we painfully lost recently, Justice Ruth Bader Ginsburg. And she once said, "Fight for the things that you care about, but do it in a way that will lead others to join you." Having led a life focused on equality, from fighting for equal pay, LGBTQI plus issues, and acceptance and racial justice, I've learned that who we fight alongside is just as important as what we fight for. Sport has the power to bring people together. And now more than ever, we need athletes who understand the power of their voices to call for change. And we need leaders in the sport industry to listen, learn, and commit to that change. In this conversation, you're going to hear from both. It's time we show up, stand up, and speak up. And I hope you leave inspired to join us. We need you, and we have a lot of work to do. So thank you, and go for it.
Welcome to the Huddle. My name is Hudson Taylar, and I'm the founder and executive director of Athlete Ally.
And I'm Lanier, founder and chief mission officer at the Out Foundation. Thank you so much for joining us today.
At Athlete Ally, we believe that sport will change the world when it welcomes and empowers all people, and that everyone should have equal access, opportunity, and experience in sport, regardless of sexual orientation, gender identity, or gender expression. At Athlete Ally, our mission is to end the rampant homophobia and transphobia in sport and to activate the athletic community to exercise their leadership to champion LGBTQ equality. We do this by providing LGBTQ education to coaches, athletes, and administrators, by ensuring that sport governing bodies, teams, and leagues adopt policies that reflect and support the full diversity of their constituents, and by working with athletes at all levels of sport to harness the power of athlete activism in advancing LGBTQ equality.
And at the Out Foundation, our mission is to remove the barriers that block LGBTQ individuals' access and participation in their own health, wellness, and fitness. We strive to create an inclusive community of all walks of life that inspires people just to feel good about themselves. We do this by joining together the LGBTQ community and our allies to participate in workouts in gyms and fitness studios around the world. We also do this by promoting programs that provide health services to the community through various initiatives. And we also facilitate gym memberships, nutrition counseling, accountability, and peer-to-peer mentorship for LGBTQ young adults to give them the tools they need to live healthy lives.
Especially during COVID-19, LGBTQ athletes and fans need to know they aren't alone, and that there are organizations and individuals out there fighting for their right to be who they are and play the sport they love. We are incredibly proud to bring you the Huddle with our friends at the Out Foundation and Yahoo Sports.
It's through these conversations and messages from these incredible athletes, many of whom are our personal heroes, that we hope you'll leave with a greater understanding of why we do the work we do, who we're fighting for, and why we need all hands on deck to make sport and fitness a place for all.
Hey everyone, thank you for joining us today for The Huddle, presented by Yahoo Sports in partnership with Athlete Ally and the Out Foundation. Now, our goal is to highlight and promote the stories of LGBTQ plus athletes and allies and provide education in this fight for inclusivity and equity within the sports world and the fitness world as a whole. I'm Kate Fagan, and this is a topic dear to my heart. I spent a lot of time at ESPN reporting stories in this space, so I'm happy to be a part of this ongoing conversation. I'm going to be moderating our panel today, and we have 4 awesome guests for you. First up is 5-time national amateur boxing champion and the first openly transgender boxer to fight professionally in the U.S., Patricio Manuel. Good to have you here. We also have Jason Collins. He is the former first round pick who played 13 years in the NBA, becoming the first openly gay active NBA player. Hey, Jason, what's up? Gold medalist, Paralympian in wheelchair basketball, and Athlete Ally Pro Ambassador. We also have Abby Dunkin here with us. Also joining the discussion in USA weightlifting member and national champion powerlifting athlete Taylar Stallings. Hey, Taylar, thanks for being here. I'm really happy all of us are here today. Of course, we can't be here in person because of the ongoing pandemic, but we have the next best thing because we have some awesome special guests that are going to be providing the questions for our panelists today. So without further ado, let's check out the first one.
Hey guys, my name is Robbie Rogers. I was a professional soccer player for about 11 years. In 2013, I came out and played with the LA Galaxy for a number of years. Around the same time, Jason, who's a good friend of mine, came out. He was a big inspiration, actually. So I have a question for Jason Collins and Patricio Manuel. You know, obviously you were the first to come out in your sports. What kind of advice would you give to LGBTQIA athletes who might be considering being the first in their sports to come out or at their schools or amongst their friends?
Jason, if you can jump in here first, that'd be great.
Sure. The first thing that I would do is build up a support system. Reach out to, if you can, through social media is a great way. Like DM either Robbie, myself, Patricio, Billie Bean, Wade Davis. There are athletes who have come out. They could sort of walk you through, what to expect. A great resource that I had was John Amici. He played in the NBA and retired a couple years and then made the announcement that he was gay. But he was a huge help to me for what to expect to prepare me mentally. When you make the decision, you sort of have to have a plan, just like all athletes. We're used to having being very regimented and having plans and having information. So as much information you can get ahead of time, that way you can come out on your own terms and sort of be prepared for what to expect. And I'm very grateful to talk with John Amici about what to expect. And he really helped me mentally.
Patricio, love to hear your thoughts on this.
Well, definitely to build on like what Jason said, I think support is so imperative. But I feel like this is all aspects of our lives. Support is just crucial in terms of thriving. None of us make it on our own. It's always as a result of interdependence and other folks helping and support us. But I think the advice I always give to people when they ask me, how do I do this? How do I be the first to come out? What should I do? I always like to be realistic. And this is a harsh world that is cruel and I think has been shown over and over to be very cruel and unforgiving to any child that steps out of line with what is the norm. And I think there needs to be some time of deep reflection of realizing what can be the possible consequences for your choices. And what will you be willing to do and to sacrifice in order to make it where you want to go? I can only use my own story as a road mark for other folks, but knowing this was something I thought about, this was something I deemed was necessary for who I am. And it shouldn't have to be this way, right? Like, I'm angry that this choice often has to be made. That we're often have to think about who we are as a whole person versus who we are in a sport and having to reconcile which one we're willing to risk. But with my own story, I knew I had to risk even the sport I love so much because I loved myself even more. And the consequences of that were I lost my team of 10 years who I thought were family, who I really love. Like, this is a reality of it. But at the same token, because I was my full self and I am my full self, it brought so much more into my life. It brought people who saw me as myself. It brought allies and supporters that I didn't even know were waiting for me out there. So even when there are sacrifices to be made, the rewards can be so big, especially if you center yourself first and foremost.
Abby, Patricio just mentioned this word, anger, that he even had to think through these things in the way that he was. Is if you can take us through the emotions that you experienced and what your process was like as you made the decision to come out.
So my decision to come out was so for me in high school, I senior prom and wasn't a big partier back then, but I guess at after party I was talking a little too loud, and some friends had overheard about the girl I was dating at the time in high school, and so it made rumors around the school. And I grew up in New Braunfels, Texas, which is kind of like a small Bible Belt town. And so that was just forbidden. Like, you could not be gay, you cannot be transgender, you cannot be anything but Christian and straight. That was just how it is. And so I kind of kept it to myself, and I kind of came out as bisexual, kind of dipping my toes in the water, like, no, I'm not gay, but I'm kind of whatever in between, because I was still having troubles like focusing on what I was and accepting that myself. And so I came out to my mom as bisexual, and she's like, "Oh, we already knew that. Actually, we're pretty sure you're gay. We've known since you were 5." I was like, well, if you knew, then like, why didn't you tell me? And so going into college and playing wheelchair basketball, I played at the University of Texas at Arlington for 5 years. And I found that community to be so opening and welcoming. And so they kind of give me that kick of confidence to kind of push me out and be like, you know what, it's okay. You can be yourself, and we love you and we accept you for who you are. And so going into my freshman year of college in 2014, I got invited to try out for the USA national senior team. And our head coach at the time was Stephanie Wheeler, who's also publicly out. And so having that kind of role model to look up to, and teammates that were so open and welcoming. So for my coming out, it wasn't a negative thing. It wasn't totally like wrong or bad for me. I didn't have a bad experience personally, which I am so grateful to have that experience that I had. But I did have a lot of people back home in New Braunfels that did not agree with it, which, I mean, that's their own opinion. I can't let my life be dictated people that frankly don't matter in my life anymore. And so, yeah, it's a huge relief and weight off your shoulders once you're able to make that step whenever you're ready.
Separately, Abby, I almost wore that T-shirt today that says female athlete. So I mean, I personally now regret not wearing it. I think that would have been a good vibe we had going on for next time. Taylar, I know the question was set up to talk about these team dynamics and the interplay between them, but I have to imagine that in your world in weightlifting, there are still many of those same dynamics at play. So, what was the process like for you as you were taking all of that into account?
Yeah, so definitely my story is very similar to Abby. My grandfather's a pastor. I was born in Tennessee, raised in Georgia, so I'm a Baptist kid, so you already know what that means. So, of course, just trying to hide who I was. I didn't even know what a lesbian was until I was in the 7th grade. I just knew I had a crush on my best friends. But then I was really attracted and kind of conversing with my first real love interest, and she was very out, but I wasn't. And she told me that she couldn't even talk to me unless I came out as well too. So, and I really cared about her, so it kind of put me in a position that I wasn't ready for, and especially being at that time I did basketball, track and field, and everything, and I wasn't ready. I told my parents thinking it was going to fix everything, and then my parents immediately they just kept saying that it wasn't true. They kept trying to think that something happened to me growing up. They thought I was sexually abused. It went there, and I told them, like, no, I've always felt this way even before. And then so I ended up I ended up getting a track and field scholarship to the University of South Florida, and this was my way of starting over, according to my parents, because nobody knew me. But it was me starting over, but me finding my true self. Because once I came down to Tampa, I literally found who I was, because I was miserable. I was incredibly miserable because I feel as if I was trying to please everybody else, and I was afraid of what my teammates thought and everybody else around me. So I had to make a really tough decision, and I was like, do I want to make everybody else happy for the rest of their lives, or do I want to make myself happy for the rest of my life? So I knew that I had to just at that point on, I just knew what was going to happen with my parents. I like, look, this is who I am. I'm not bisexual. I'm a lesbian. This is who I am. And once that happened, my parents disowned me for a good little bit. And then our relationship went up and down, but I felt like a huge weight came off my shoulders. And then once I was able to open up to all my other teammates, they're like, okay, whatever. And I thought it was going to be this big deal, but I found out the people who really did love me and care about me, that they didn't care. They just wanted to make sure I performed well. So once I found out who I was and my true self, it wasn't as big of a deal as I made it out to be in my head. And now, fast forward to now, my parents have came around. They're a lot more accepting. They're accepting of me and my wife. And it's a big difference from high school side.
Well, thank you for that, and for all four of you, because I know these kinds of coming out stories, and there's so much overlap right across them, because so many of us have gone through so many of the same feelings. They're just so important for all of, hopefully, the young people out there that watch. All right, let's move on, and let's get to our next question. Here it is.
Hi guys, my name is Ben Skinner. I am a rugby athlete from Canada. I was actually the first openly transgender rugby player to represent the Canada Ravens Rugby League program. I personally have been proudly vocal on trans inclusion and racial justice. As we all know, now is a time when more allyship is needed in intersectional ways. So my question for the panel is, how can we be showing up for each other across movements?
Taylar, I'm going to swing this one right back around to you if you want to jump in first here.
I love this question. How can we show up for each other? It's great. It's just simple as just talking to each other and just reaching out in our community and just speaking up more. I know myself, at times I have been quiet because I didn't want to ruffle any feathers, because I knew that I had friends on both sides that didn't fully agree with it or whatever, and I didn't want to make them uncomfortable. But then I realized I was doing my community a disservice for not showing up. So just being vocal and just being aware, if you hear any kind of hate that's out there, any kind of discrimination, instead of just turning the blind eye and be like, it's not my problem or whatever. We have to stand up. We have to bring the BIPOC, the trans, our entire community out there, just to be more vocal about it, just on social, whether it's social media, going to events, just advocating for each other. We just need to be speaking and bringing more awareness.
Jason, I'm curious, you were in that NBA world and the first one to be, in a locker room and be talking about these issues. What was your sense about how, the sport that you know so well, what position they are in when you're talking not just about, L and the G, but also the T as well?
Well, with our sport, it comes down to, if you can play, you can play. I think the WNBA has been leading the way. I know that there are some gender nonconforming players who are playing in the W, but more so for showing up is when the T is being attacked, whether you're a member of the G, the L, the B. Like when one group is being attacked, we're all being attacked, and we have to speak up and protect and show up. So one example of that is the legislation that was passed in Idaho that was attacking trans youth. So I, through my resources, reached out to the NCAA and then also obviously with Athlete Ally and other organizations to use my voice, to use my platform to speak out against discriminatory legislation. And it seems of late that it's like every other month there's some new bill that's coming along that is attacking the trans community. So I try to use my voice, my platform, and then also encourage my league, my basketball brothers and sisters to also use their platform. And I think someone who's been great on these issues is Lasia Clarendon from the WNBA. She's been a huge voice, and whatever I can do to amplify her voice and use my voice, more people speaking out together, better.
Patricio, I wanted Jason and Taylar to kind of set the foundation here, but I want to come to you just on, within the LGBTQ plus umbrella, a lot of times it is that T that is bearing the brunt, is certainly in the world we live in now with, as Jason mentioned, so many policy changes and all of that. What has your experience been, even within the LGBTQ world, about how these issues are treated and what the reception is like?
Well, I mean, I've been saying this for ever since someone gave me a microphone, which was probably back in like 2010, 2011, when they had women's boxing finally come into the Olympics. These aren't separate issues. These aren't individual, separate little pockets we can have aside. If we really look at homophobia, transphobia, racism, anti-Blackness, all of it is under the root umbrella of white supremacy. This is about total liberation. It's not about being like, well, I want to be able to get my power. I want to be able to be seen as equal to the people in the highest positions. If we only look at these as separate issues, then it's just looking at, like, if we look at the LG or even the B issue and not trans people, then we're just looking to have homosexual people have the same power as heteronormative people. And that never brings into the equation of race into it at all. I mean, LGBTQ movements come from Black trans femmes being at the front and forefront of all of these rights. It's always people who have the most to gain from freedom that are going to be pushing the most for that freedom. So I'm not surprised that we see the WNBA leading the charge there. I mean, if we can look at the term intersectional, it comes from Kimberly Crenshaw. As a Black woman, we don't get to suddenly be only one pocket of oppression. Like, so many of us live multiple different identities. And it's really, at the end of the day, are you only interested in your freedom, or are you interested in everyone's freedom? And I, for one, am not interested in any freedom that comes at the expense of other people.
Yeah, such an important statement. Abby, I'm going to come back around to you after this question. So this next question is coming first to you. Here it is.
Hi, I'm Jen Grosshandler, founder of the Gender Cool Project, a national movement that's helping to replace misinformed opinions with positive, powerful experiences meeting transgender and non-binary young people. So I'm asking you this question, both as a parent of a 14-year-old transgender daughter named Chazzy, as well as a lifelong athlete. So I know, and y'all know, the power that having access to sports, that to finding your strength can have on helping to accomplish things in your life you never thought possible. All kids, including LGBTQ young people, should have access to sports in a way that makes them feel welcomed. And unfortunately, we know that many of our kiddos just don't feel that. So my question is, how do you see athletic spaces and the industry evolving to become more inclusive for all?
All right, Abby, will you jump in here first for this?
Okay. I think it's important for young LGBTQ plus athletes to find their people, to find those people that will stand with them, that will support them, and to lift them up. And unfortunately, here in the States, everything's going to go back to our government and policies, kind of like the previous question. That's where it's going to start from. From my perspective, it's confusing. Why is LGBTQ plus rights not considered a human right? Why are we separating these two different things? Black Lives Matter. Of course, Black Lives Matter. LGBTQ plus lives matter as well. You don't see a newborn down the street crying or throwing a temper tantrum because the newborn is seeing a gay couple hold hands as they walk down the street, or throwing a temper tantrum because they see an interracial couple holding hands down the street. These things are taught and these things are learned. And so I think it goes back to our government, to our policies, and the leadership that we're facing in this country. And I think that's where we need to start and focus on. And with all these new Supreme Court nominations, everything that's going on right now, it's scary. I mean, it's kind of opening your eyes like, wow, you know what, this could change a lot. But this is also where we have to come together and all in arms and support and be vocal, and not to shut up and dribble, but to use our First Amendment right, because we are human beings at the end of the day. And so to have those inclusive spaces for those young athletes, we need to show them that it is okay at the high level, no matter age, race, color, religion, gender, whatever. But we need to show our young people that it's okay and you are loved no matter what you are, no matter who you are or what you identify as. And so I think that's a big message.
Patricio, how do you look at this? I mean, I know there's so many issues right now that are at the Supreme Court, and sometimes we can feel, helpless to be affecting things in those spaces. And it's like, let's just make the world around us as good as it can be. Do you, it's not an either or, right? We can do both. How do you approach it?
Well, for me, I'm not someone who my advocacy is in policy work. My advocacy is on personal connections and relationships. And that has where I have seen the biggest shift that I think helps to push that policy forward. I'm from a sport that people do not think of as accepting. But my own story, my own lived experiences demonstrate that it's very possible. Everything that I have, everything that I'm known for is a result of personal relationships. My story got known because the LA Times was following me. They were following me because I was teammates with two brothers who were going for the Olympics. Thought it was interesting, made sure to advocate for me to make sure my story was showcased when I was first going for the Olympic boxing trials as a female athlete. When I transitioned, that relationship brought into my story of transitioning into boxing as a male athlete, being shown to other people. My fight, my pro debut was a direct result of Eric Gomez from Golden Boy Promotions, Oscar de la Hoya's promotional company, hearing my story the next day, being like, give Pat my number. I want to make sure that he gets an opportunity to fight. I have been a privilege of watching so many people who had never even thought about trans issues, had never even thought about LGBTQ sports, suddenly having these conversations with me about like, what is gender, right? Like thinking that trans people were crazy until realizing like, oh, someone I care about and respect in the sport is trans, and having these huge shifts going from saying homophobic things all the time to literally being willing to throw down and fight for me when I'm not present because someone else is throwing slurs at me. This is all a direct result of relationship building. And I think, we think about the policy so much, but as coming from a sport that isn't in school, like there's not as much policy and law that dictate what goes on in the gym. And this is also our lived reality as Black and people of color in low-income areas. Is like we need each other. All we've got is each other to have our back, and that has had my back the entire time are the people who aren't being brought into the courtrooms, who aren't being able to advocate for themselves, who also are having to deal with state-sanctioned violence by police consistently. It's our similarities that united us and bring it stronger, and now they're willing to have a stake in the fight for trans inclusion and trans equality, all because we came together under the guise of sports and really were able to see our shared humanity.
Taylar, Patricio mentioned just that shift in the people around him. And it sounds like you saw that shift, at least in your parents, in the world around you. How do you take that shift in the world around you and try to expand, the bubble that is your world to kind of have those ripple effects outward?
Yeah, it's definitely shifting every day. I feel as if 2020 is definitely shifting for everybody. But I definitely been very blessed and fortunate to actually be a director for the Out Foundation, which is a foundation started with CrossFit, but now we're expanding to all athletics, but our main mission is to unite the LGBTQ community and to help them find safe spaces in wherever their location is. So we provide scholarships for athletes that consist of gym access, so they don't have to pay for a membership, to LGBTQ ally facility. They also have, they're outfitted with clothes, they get meals and everything. So we make sure that they are taken care of, and they also get the mental health awareness as well too. But we try to give them and offer them a safe space and a safe community where they can come, they can talk, they can express their fears, their emotions, their frustrations, and everything in a safe community that's revolved around athletics. So I'm very, very fortunate to be a part of the Out Foundation that promotes that. I know there's other organizations out there that's expanding that, and even my home gym, we're definitely LGBTQ friendly. So finding those spaces and make sure we're magnifying those locations is definitely important.
All right, Jason, I'm going to give you the last word here on what you think the next step is in this fight.
Well, to me, it all goes back to visibility and using whatever platform you have, whatever friendships you have. Start where you are, start with what you know, and use your voice, use your platform, and encourage those people in positions of leadership to do the right thing. We are so fortunate in the NBA. We have the best commissioner in all of sports, Adam Silver. He is so supportive in encouraging our athletes to use their voice. We saw what happened with the Milwaukee Bucks during the bubble about a month ago, and through the Milwaukee Bucks actions, that ripple effect throughout the NBA, WNBA, Major League Baseball, the Western and Southern Open in tennis, Naomi Osaka, you saw athletes use their voice. Know that you have a voice, you have a platform, so please use it, please be visible.
Well, on that note, I just wanted to thank all four of you for using your platforms and your voices and being visible to help change this world in sports and outside of it. So thanks to all four of you. And we have another panel coming up about how leagues and teams are continuing the fight for inclusion across sports. Coming up right after this.
I'm Ryan Russell, NFL player who played with the Dallas Cowboys and Tampa Bay Buccaneers. About a year ago last month, I came out as bisexual. I was the first and still only active NFL player to do so. And I didn't come out from fear of being outed. Of course, there was a little hesitation with my career and the perception that the media has given out athletes, especially in male sports. But coming out was a decision that I had to make for me. Living my truth was about loving myself and loving who I am outside of just what I do. In sports, especially male professional sports, there are little to no LGBTQ plus representation. I remember watching Michael Sam get drafted and feeling a bit of inspiration, a bit of pride, but also a lot of fear. Fear for him and fear for any athlete who steps into a space so alone, into a spotlight so magnified. The only way, of course, to remedy this would be to have more athletes coming out, more LGBTQ plus athletes also going into sports at a young age and sticking with it. Football has given me some of the greatest gifts in my life. It's allowed me to take care of my family. It's brought me brotherhood and friendship. It's brought me mentors, especially male mentors. Growing up without a father, that was a huge deal for me. And it pains me to think that LGBTQ plus people, especially LGBTQ plus youth, are missing out on those opportunities, those connections because of the stigma and the fears and the homophobia and misogyny that we have allowed to seep into sports and sports culture. Now we're in a beautiful time, a time of change, and a time where stress and pressure will either turn us into diamonds or crush us. Now it's time for leagues, not just the NFL, but all leagues, all professional leagues, sports on all levels to come together and to create change for all of us. Sports has the beautiful power of bringing people together. People from different backgrounds, people from different religions, people with different ethnicities, skin colors, sexualities. Everyone in my family, friends, all of us come together to watch Super Bowl. Whether we're rooting for the same teams, whether we want the same success or the same outcome, we're all in the room together, laughing, cheering, some of us yelling at the TV, but we're there enjoying the moment together and making memories together. That's the beauty of sports. That's the beauty of these teams and these leagues. And they have an incredible power and opportunity to open the hearts and change the minds of so many people. Sports influences more people than we know, from the players that you see on the screens to all of the staff in the business and the choices that are made off of the field, where organizations and teams put their money and their resources, where they put their imagery, where they feed into the communities that they're a part of. I encourage sports, teams, leagues across the board to stand for the LGBTQ plus community, players and fans alike, by investing in LGBTQ plus education, implementing inclusive policies, and welcoming all players and fans with open arms. I believe it will be a win for all of us.
Welcome back. Thank you to Ryan Russell for that important message. I'm now joined by three new guests as we continue today's mission of providing education on the fight for inclusivity and equity within sports. So we've already spoken to the athletes today, and we're going to keep moving forward in the conversation by speaking to those involved in the leagues and the teams and the agents that help create the world around those athletes. So joining me today on the Business of Sport panel, we have the Executive Vice President of Talent and the Collective for Wasserman, Lindsay Kagavakolis. We also have Rick Welts, President and COO of the Golden State Warriors and the first executive in major professional sports to come out. And last but not least, we have Oris Stewart. He is the NBA Chief People and Inclusion Officer. So thanks to all three of you for joining us today. And we have some questions lined up, and the first one comes to you from the National Women's Soccer League.
Hey everyone, Elise LaHue, General Manager of Sky Blue FC of the NWSL. Inclusion and diversity of community are really important to us as a club and part of our club values here at Sky Blue. So my question for the group is as follows. As a leader in sport, how do you work with players, coaches, and staff to instill values of respect and inclusion from the get-go and ensure that this becomes a lasting part of team and league culture?
Rick, I'd love to hear from you first as someone who is involved in that culture of a team. How would you answer that question?
Thanks, Kate. I think probably two main factors. One is about the leadership of the team, and the other is about how you engage in the conversation. I think Joe Lacob and Peter Gruber 10 years ago, when they hired me as an openly gay man to be president of the team, made a pretty big statement to our organization about how they felt. But I think that the thing that's really been key for us is that conversation just has to be ongoing. We have created a culture where we talk about these things, we emphasize them, we talk about them again. We deal with issues if they come up, and I think there's a comfort level that grows over time with people who know that they can bring their authentic selves to the office. That's back when we were going to the office. Hopefully, they'll be able to do that again soon. But that they'll be accepted for who they are, and that the leadership of the organization is always going to have their back if they're ever in a situation that they encounter that makes them uncomfortable or anything inappropriate. So we're incredibly lucky to have Bob Myers as our president of basketball operations and Steve Kerr as our head coach. This is who they are. And I think that the three of us try to lead the organization in a way that people feel safe and people feel welcome.
Now, Oris, as someone who's looking at the NBA as a whole, I mean, and you have so many different guys and women in the NBA who come from different backgrounds, maybe different religious beliefs. How do you navigate as the chief people and inclusion officer, blending so many different people who come from so many different perspectives?
It starts by making sure that everyone in our organization understands that respect and inclusion are not only core values, but they're strategic business priorities for us. And it's you just heard Rick say it. It's about what we say and what we do, but it's more even so about who we are. And so, just making sure that we embody the these commitments to inclusion in everything that we do. And it's about making sure that everyone recognizes the inherent value in the diversity that you just referenced, that because we're diverse and because we bring these incredibly powerful but different perspectives and experiences, that we can be and will be a better organization for leveraging those differences to really create outcomes that we couldn't have just making decisions on our own. And so recognizing that that it's who we are, we embrace the differences, we have a culture of inclusion, but beyond that, there is real value we can create by leveraging those differences. I mean, that's the conversation that we have with folks when they join the organization, and to the point Rick made a little bit earlier, it's a conversation that we continue to have over time, so it just gets embedded in how we carry ourselves.
Now, Linda, at Wasserman, where it seems like it's such a priority, making sure that your athletes, are leaders in that diversity, inclusion, equity space. What was it like, when you first started at Wasserman, building the culture even within Wasserman, so that when you engaged with athletes, they really saw who you all were?
Well, thanks for the question, Kate. It's funny because you were there really early on. Um,
Sure.
when I joined Wasserman from another agency, there was never really a question. My roster was what it was, and our people have always the people that I represent have always been very clear about who they are, and authenticity has always been core to the business that I run. And so, from the very beginning, there was a very easy embrace to making sure that we were representing our athletes as whole people. It's a part of our recruiting process is making sure that we do understand that whole person, and it really comes to bear in every aspect of the business where we make a real effort to hire staff that interacts to support and serve our clients in a way that's representative of all sorts of different backgrounds and different approaches and points of view. So I think diversity has always been core to the business that we run, and that extends also to brands and being really intentional about targeting brands for our clients that will appreciate that authenticity and appreciate a diverse point of view. And it seems like the industry is catching up a little bit, which is nice.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, got to be one of the high points at Wasserman, just seeing like Sue Bird just win this WNBA championship, and her who she is the selling point, right? It's not like she has to be someone
Absolutely.
else. It's like everybody wants that because it's so engaging. All right, let's make sure we move it along, and we'll toss it to our next guest for the next question.
Hey everyone, my name is Janelle Farias. I'm a professional soccer player, currently play for Chivas Femenil and the women's Mexican national soccer team. I wrote an op-ed about homophobic chanting and how it affected me personally as a lesbian soccer player, and why we need to change the stadium and the importance of not using that type of language around our fans and around players. How is your industry or league working to transform that culture? How is your organization working to fight for inclusivity and diversity?
So, Oris, now this is a question where it's obviously you have less, in some ways, you have less control over because you're engaged with the players in the NBA. But one thing you have less control over is what the fans bring to an arena when they're actually in the arena. But hopefully, we'll get back to that place. But what kind of energy exists that maybe you have less control over? How do you engage with your players as you talk to them about how to navigate that dynamic?
Well, as it relates to our players, it starts the moment they enter the league. We have a 4-day rookie transition program that introduces them to the experience they're going to have by being a part of the NBA, but it also introduces them to our expectations and to our culture and to our core values. And for at least the last 8 years, we've implemented as part of that program a conversation around inclusion, and we've included partners like Hudson Taylar from Athlete Ally, and Jason Collins has been a regular contributor to that process, and many others, to make sure that this is a value and this is an expectation that we establish, very very early on. And so that's one of the mechanisms that we've established, and it's something that persists through conversations with our teams, that our teams having on their own or that they often have with outside facilitators. And we have a series of learning experiences and educational experiences that reinforce what's expected of us, and why this value is so important, why we as staff, as employees, as players, everyone associated with our league has to stand up, for this the standard of inclusion. And as it relates to our fans, we have less control, but we have established a code of conduct that sets out expectations for our fans as well, a zero tolerance policy on inappropriate behavior. So we think that's an important mechanism.
Linz, I know when we first met, we were talking about the world of women's sports. There were still a lot of athletes within that world who didn't feel like their marketability would be the same if they came out. There were still a lot of concerns, and it feels pretty obviously that things have shifted in the last 7 to 8 years. What do you think has happened within women's sports, at least from an outsider's perspective, to help move it forward to a place where it feels like female athletes can more fully be themselves?
I feel like culture is moving really quickly and progress is happening faster than ever. I think we have young people to thank for so much of that. We also have really cool couples like Megan Rapinoe and Sue Bird, being very out and very cool, and people sort of getting on the bandwagon. But I I think it's a few things. Women have always been judged for everything, not just their performance. If it was performance, we would have seen a ton of stars, people like Diana Taurasi, years and years and years ago, being the most marketable athletes in the world. But I do think as society has moved to understanding and embracing that whole person, in many ways, women are taking the lead because they are so interesting and so multifaceted. And I think women in particular really connect with that. I also think we're at a moment where people are coming to understand that supporting women in sports is an act of feminism and that it is vital. and that it is necessary because our everyday lives are political, and that showing up for women in sports in a myriad of different ways. It might not be buying a ticket. We're not doing a lot of that right now, but tuning into games, consuming media, buying a jersey, buying a t-shirt, showing that there's an appetite for merchandise that celebrates women athletes. That's all really important. And I do think that we're starting to connect the dots more broadly on what it means to support women in sports and how important that is to creating the change that we want to see. And the media plays a big part in that. Brands play a huge part in that. The storytelling that happens around people and around diverse families and couples, that's all really critical. And that's how culture moves.
Now, Rick, it's as Lindsay was saying, and all of us have been saying, like the culture has moved quickly, and sports certainly feels like a much more inclusive, diverse place than it was 10 years ago. And yet, as so many people point out, we're still in a world where we don't have that huge male sports star and one of the big, whatever all the qualifications are. So there's certainly still barriers, and we shouldn't, or whatever the right word is. I don't know if it's a barrier or it's a perceived barrier that still exists in the sports world. If you could talk to that a little bit about what you see from your position and the things you hear from inside the NBA about maybe some things that keep some athletes still thinking it might be better to be in some form of a closet.
Really interesting question. I get asked this a lot. I've had really good conversations with former NBA players on this subject. And, I really believe we forget that these are 20-something human beings. We look at them as superhuman, as fully formed people. And in many ways, they haven't had the same life experiences that a lot of us have who haven't had this amazing special talent and been treated very differently our whole lives. I hear about a really finite amount of time to earn a living at the one thing they've been great at doing their whole lives. But I hear more than anything, the one that resonates with me is how a team comes together and is successful. It's such a delicate chemistry that while I don't talk to players who think there would be an issue of acceptance within their team or even fans, I think there is a concern, especially for a star player, that taking that step, such a public step, could bring a crush of interest and media attention to that team and potentially disrupt that delicate chemistry, having nothing to do with what's right or wrong or what you're comfortable with or not, but just what that would impose upon a player and a team around him is a reason for pause. And I get it. This is not, a 50-year-old who's got a life experience that they can draw upon. So I still think those barriers there. I'm the biggest WNBA fan in the world. I think the NBA is behind the WNBA significantly in this, men's sports in general. And maybe I can just tell one quick story. The NBA, follows the talk with action, right? The week I came out in a front page New York Times article at being gay, I was president of Phoenix Suns in 2011. Unfortunately, that same week, Kobe Bryant used a gay slur on the court. And I think my story was a little current in David Stern's mind. So $100,000 later, I think Kobe, our players, and our fans understood that that's not something that was going to be tolerated in the NBA.
And we had Jason Collins on earlier, and we didn't talk about this, but I think, Rick, one thing you're kind of alluding to is that these guys are 20, and one thing they don't want is when there's like a Supreme Court decision that like all the reporters are running into the locker room and they need comment. So it almost becomes like there's a little bit of, like you said, that added pressure on so much on these guys who are often so young. But let's move on. We've got one more question, and we'll tee it up now.
Hi, my name is Yahoo King. I play for the Utah Royals of the NWSL. And my question is, athletes' lives don't end when we step off the field. We're affected by societal issues all around us all the time. So how can leagues and executives support athletes to speak out about the causes we believe in? Thank you.
So, Lindsay, I'd be remiss not to give this one to you because I know you and your team at Wasserman have been so passionate about doing this work, which is like creating this voice for your clients off the court and in the issues they believe in. And what have you seen when it comes to this? What are the pitfalls? What's the upside? What's the scope of it?
Yeah, Rick, it was interesting you made that point about that delicate team balance and wanting to make sure that when you do come out, or if you do come out, or if you do take a stand on really any issue, you have to understand that as an athlete, you may become the person that's who they ask every question, even remotely related to that subject. And so I do think that really does play in. And I've heard that from clients, but our work, because I've really focused and specialized in representing women for almost 20 years now, you know, even recently, as just a handful of years ago, there wasn't a lot of brand activity around women athletes. So the proactive work that we were able to do was very much focused in and around activism. And we didn't hear a lot of get back in the kitchen when women are standing up talking about things that are, important to their everyday life and are issues that affect them personally. So that was always really a core focus for us in the way that we represented our clients. It's really where we start because it's who they are, and it determines what's important to them, and it determines how we can make an impact. So, it's always been vital to our work, I think, to do that and really to center and to celebrate our clients' activism. And now that's proving to be really marketable, which is nice. And so we're seeing today more engagement around, the WNBA, which centered this summer during their season, Say Her Name and racial justice. And it was very much a part of why the women came to the bubble and how they organized together through it. I think we've never seen better engagement. We've never seen better coverage. And I think we've taken huge steps forward as a league. And a lot of that, I'd like to say, we can attribute to the women being really organized about some of the most important conversations that we can have today and really demonstrating their ability to lead in those conversations. So we're starting to see a lot of energy come together around the activism and brands really wanting to be clear about who they are and what they stand for. And they're coming to understand that these women are really fantastic spokespeople who are really clear about who they are and can help a brand tell a story.
Now, Oris, as the NBA Chief People and Inclusion Officer, if you can give us some insight into the conversations you were having leading up to the guys going into the bubble and how you're balancing hoops with what matters and racial injustice and all of the conversations that we're having in the quote unquote outside world. How do you balance all of those?
Well, you start with a recognition that, in this case in particular, a recognition that the restart of our season offered a unique opportunity for our players to voice their point of view, their opinion, to stand up for those issues and topics that were so important to them. And important to us as a league. uh, we uh, we had many conversations about uh, what our options were to facilitate a conversation beyond the game, to set up opportunities for us to have conversations among not only our players but partners that we have outside that could provide additional context on what's happening in the world around us. It was an incredible experience to hear from our players, to listen to what was important to them, to share perspectives on what was happening, and really ultimately to come together in an incredibly powerful and meaningful way to do what we've been able to do over our time during the restart in Orlando. And so, what I think it reflected is a shared commitment to social justice and inclusion, and us really working together, team governors, players, coaches, and league officials, to really leverage all of our resources and assets to a shared cause.
Yeah. Now, Rick, I'll give you the last few seconds here. What do you think? The next step is for the NBA on this issue, because as many of our panelists throughout, this last hour have alluded to, the WNBA has been so proactive and they've they've set such a standard for what can be done. What do you think the future holds for the NBA in this regard?
Well, I think we have to continue doing good work. This is a job unfinished, right? So not every single NBA team has a Pride Night. We've had them for many years. In fact, we had Megan Rapinoe and Sue Bird, who are getting referred to a lot in this program at our last Pride celebration. I'm out there trying as much as I can to get it in forums like this where we can talk about this and we can engage people on it. I just think the NBA has a great history of celebrating individuality and its players. I actually trace it back to the 1980s when we first went to NBC with our broadcast rights, and Dick Ebersol and David Stern started talking about how better to promote our game. And it was in that moment that we moved away from promoting Lakers versus Celtics on Sunday afternoon to Larry Bird versus Magic Johnson on Sunday afternoon, and realized that we kind of ceded to the players and acknowledged that that's what people care about. Their stories are so compelling, and they're really interesting, complicated people who have opinions on things way beyond basketball. And that embrace, I think, has gone on from the 80s to today. I'm so proud of what happened in Orlando. So I just think we keep at it. We keep talking about it, and we try to get 10% better every year.
Well, thanks, Rick. Thanks, Lindsay. Thanks, Oris. Thanks to all of our panelists throughout the day, and the question askers for taking the time to send in their voices. And thanks to all of you at home for watching along. Hopefully there's something useful in here that you can take and use to make the world around you better. The fight for inclusion is a long one, but with the help and the support of everyone and guests like we had today and question askers like we had today and all of you all at home, I think we can make a difference for generations to come. So thanks to everyone, and keep on fighting.
Hi, my name is Chris Mosier. My pronouns are he, him, and his, and I'm a Hall of Fame triathlete, All-American duathlete, and 6-time member of Team USA. In 2015, I became the first known transgender man to represent the United States in international competition, leading the International Olympic Committee to change their policy on trans athletes. Being the first in anything is never easy. As you heard today from Billie Jean King, Jason Collins, Patricio Manuel, Rick Welts, and others, we've had to fight for the spaces in sport that should be open to all LGBTQI athletes. Sometimes it takes just one person to knock that door down, but all the athletes who came before and will come after are a tremendous part of that moment. Conversations like the ones we've had today are incredibly important in showing us how far we've come since any of us first proudly declared who we are within the sports world. We can only understand where we're going as a movement when we understand the steps it took to get there. From Billie's historic Battle of the Sexes, to Jason's cover on Sports Illustrated, to me pulling on a Team USA jersey. The fight for trans inclusion is now the biggest fight in sports that we face as a global sports community. Across the world, and especially here in the United States, trans athletes are under attack simply for being who they are. Now, we know trans youth play sports for the same reasons that their friends and teammates do, for the love of the game, the joy and the friendships it brings, and yet state legislators and global sport governing bodies like World Rugby are threatening to ban them from sports. This is a denial of trans people's human rights, and we need allies across the sports community to join us in speaking up and out. As we close out the huddle, I want to ask all of you to join me, Athlete Ally, and the Out Foundation in championing equal access and opportunity in sports for everyone. Sport has forever changed my life, and every young person should have that same opportunity.